Welcome to the Kosher Kitchen, Lesson 5, Tevilas Keilim, Part 2. Clay Suda, when one acquires meal utensils from a non-Jew, you have to dip it in a mikveh. It requires tefillah in a mikveh. To dip it in a mikveh before you use them, you shouldn't use them even once. The only meal utensils that are made out of metal or glass, Duralex, Corel, Pyrex, require tefillah in a mikveh. If it's made out of wood, china, rubber, or plastic, does not require tefillah in a mikveh, as we saw this all last time. What about if you have something that's china or earthenware? It itself does not require to be brought to the mikveh, but it has a glaze on it, a glass glaze. Do you consider that a glass utensil and requires tefillah in the mikveh or not? You might want to ask your rabbi what he would recommend that you do. I followed the opinion of Rabbi Feinstein, who said that that's not considered clay suda. So, for example, the crock pot insert, which has a glaze on it, I did not bring to the mikveh. Others take it to the mikveh and are tovel it, immerse it, dip it without a bracha. However, the glass cover made out of glass definitely would require tefillah in the mikveh. This is glass, you would have to dip it. Question is, what about the insert? Does that require tefillah in the mikveh? So, in general, the things that you have in your mikveh, in your kitchen, your cutlery, your drinking glasses, your plates, if they're made of a material that requires, your pots and your pans, all those things should be brought to the mikveh before you're used. The favorite pastime a lot of times, the chassan and kala, the week of their wedding, they're waiting to go to Sheva Brachos or go to a Keilim mikveh, to a place to take all of their new things and put them in the mikveh. Some things don't require tefillah in the mikveh, even though they think they might. This is metal can opener. It's used when you're preparing food for the meal, but it doesn't touch the food at all. Your corkscrew. Also, it's used to, you bring the wine to the table only after you take the cork out or take it out at the meal. But even though it's metal, but doesn't require tefillah in the mikveh because it doesn't touch the food at all. You have things that touch the food when the food is not yet edible. It's a question as to whether that's called meal utensil. The dough hook that you have on a magic mill. So it's just mixing the dough, and the dough itself is not edible. Or you could have a coffee mill. You take the coffee beans and grind them. So the coffee at that point is not edible, it has to be brewed. So does that require tefillah in a mikveh? That we say, since we're not sure, bring it to a mikveh, but don't recite a blessing on it. You don't have to put a blessing on it. Today, in today's lesson, we're going to make a very simple cake, a coffee cake. And it's so simple that the cookbook that I took the recipe from calls this a 1, 2, 3, 4 cake. Has 1 cup of oil, 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of apple juice, 3 cups of flour, 4 eggs. That's the basic ingredients. It has some vanilla sugar in it, and it has some baking powder. And that's it. And it's topped with sugar and cinnamon to give it nice smell and nice flavor. So it's a very easy cake to make. So we're going to make this cake now, and as we're going through, we'll discuss some of the Tevilas Keilim laws that are relevant. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to crack the 4 eggs. And as we said in other lessons, that when you're using eggs, you have to check them to make sure they don't have any blood spots. So this is a drinking glass. I brought it to the mikveh before I ever used them. Now we're going to use this. It's very easy to check the egg. If you find a blood spot on the yolk or floating around, throw the egg out and don't use it. So we'll crack the egg, and I'll put it into the glass, so I'll be able to actually check it from all angles because the glass is, you can see nothing in here. That's egg number 1. Okay, here's number 4. Egg number 4. No blood spot. It's not too common to find blood spots, but you never know. You have to check to see. I'm going to add cup of oil. Make sure that your oil, this is a canola oil, make sure whatever oil you buy has a Kosher symbol on it. Put in 2 cups of sugar, and we'll put in 1 cup of juice. You want this to be parve, so you can use apple juice, you can use orange juice, you can use non-dairy creamer. If you have oat milk or almond milk or something like that, soy milk, you could use those also. Now before we add the flour to it, we'll mix these all together with a metal whisk. So the metal whisk obviously has been poured into the mikvah, and now you want to Tevilas it. So we make sure that these are mixed together. The only thing that's left to add to it is the flour. You want to add the flour not all at one time, because you add the flour and the baking powder, they get clumped up if you put too much together. So I'm going to take 2 cups of flour, and point out again, the canister that the flour is in is not brought to the table. You don't use it in preparing the meal, preparing the food. Just stores the flour. Stores something actually isn't even edible. So this doesn't require tefillah in a mikvah. Based on everything we said before, you would put it in the mikvah without reciting a bracha, without a lesson. I'll bring it over here. It'll be a little bit easier to do. So this I brought to the mikvah without making a bracha. Put in 2 cups. I probably normally would do 1 at a time, but mix it in. We'll blend this in a little bit. We'll whisk it. And what other ingredients are we going to put in? We're going to put in the tablespoon of vanilla sugar and metal mixing cup, measuring spoons of baking powder. The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of baking powder. 1 tablespoon of baking powder and 1 tablespoon of vanilla sugar. Then we'll be able to mix these all together. Sugar and cinnamon. So the recipe calls for 1/2 cup of sugar, tablespoon of cinnamon. So try to whisk it so we get all of the clumps out. Now let's discuss this for a moment. There's some other things that are worth discussing. So we have the sugar and the cinnamon. Sugar and the cinnamon I mixed and I put it into a jar. So the glass jar that was acquired from a non-Jew, I bought beech nut baby carrots. I put the sugar and the cinnamon in, and I did not make a bracha. I did not even Tevilas. I didn't even put it in the mikvah. Why not? It's a glass jar that was purchased from a non-Jew. The Feinstein Zechron Levrach, Moshe Feinstein, said that really what did I buy? I bought baby carrots. The jar was made just to contain the baby carrots and be thrown out afterwards. They weren't at that point considered clay suda. They weren't meal utensils. They're made to be thrown away. When I decided to use it to store the sugar and the cinnamon in it, it's considered I was the one who made it into clay suda. I'm the one who made it into meal utensil. I'm Jewish. So when it was made into a meal utensil by a Jew, it does not require tefillah in the mikvah, so I therefore did not immerse it in the mikvah. So again, the recipe says you should put half of the batter into the baking pan, spread the sugar and cinnamon on it, put the rest of the batter in it, and put the rest of the cinnamon and sugar on it. So now, baking pans. I'm going to bake it in a disposable baking pan. This disposable baking pan is made out of aluminum. Aluminum pans and pots should be put into the mikvah. I did not put this in the mikvah. and you might want to ask your rabbi, but Moshe Zechron Baruch felt, and most people feel, that disposables don't have to be put into the mikveh. Because only something is considered a utensil. Something that's flimsy and made to be thrown away, doesn't have the importance of being designated as a utensil. Something that's it's not important enough to have a designation as klei suda, so you could use this without being titled in the mikveh, without dipping it. But if I was going to use a real solid permanent baking dish, then this would have been dipped into the mikveh. This was dipped into the mikveh before we ever used it. So I'm going to go now and put this aside. Take about half of the batter. Use our plastic spatula. Use the plastic spatula, and which did not go into the mikveh. Put about half of this in here. And it doesn't have to be exactly half, whatever it is. Take the sugar and cinnamon. Spread it on top so that the middle of the cake will have these nice flavors. Take the rest of the batter and top it with that. And I'm going to put the rest of the cinnamon and sugar over that. Okay. Some more cinnamon and sugar. Have some left over for the next time I use it. So now, I'm ready to put it in the oven. But before we put it into the oven, something that's I think it's worth talking about. So in the oven, here are oven racks. These racks are used in preparing the food. Do they have to be titled these racks? The answer is no, because you don't put food directly on these oven racks. You don't take the oven racks and put chicken on there. You put chicken in a pan. You put baking the cake that you bake in the oven in the baking pan. It's not something you put food directly on. However, your broiler pan that you might put your franks on, you might put your steak on. So the broiler pan should be put into the mikveh before you use it. Even if you put a sheet of aluminum foil over this, but really the aluminum foil is not considered a utensil. It's basically put on top of this. So the broiler rack should go into the mikveh, while the oven rack does not have to go into the mikveh. And actually, we'll put this into the oven. We'll set the timer about, let's say you set it for 50 minutes. And hopefully, in 50 minutes, it's going to come out looking like this. A coffee cake with cinnamon and sugar on top. But before we finish, I want to point out the contrast to the oven racks, the toaster oven racks. You don't have to be titled the toaster oven, but the toaster oven racks, it's pretty common. It's pretty not unusual for a person to take a slice of bread, melt some cheese on it, and put it directly on the rack, or on a piece of aluminum foil. But this rack, you might have food that goes directly on it. If you're heating up the pizza, you might put the pizza directly on it on a piece of aluminum foil. So contrast the oven racks, which does not have to go into the mikveh. The toaster oven racks, if you use them by sometimes putting the food directly on there, would have to go into the mikveh. So just before we finish, to review what we covered today, so the things that are used with food that is not edible yet, your dough hook, your coffee mill, you put into the mikveh without a bracha. Your corkscrew and your can opener doesn't touch the food at all, doesn't have to go into the mikveh. The glazed china, difference of opinions. Make sure you have a rabbi you feel comfortable asking what you should do. I was not table mine. Your rabbi might tell you immerse it in a mikveh without a bracha. The baby jar, I was not table. It was made into meal utensil by myself. It was made by the company just to package the baby carrots and be thrown in the garbage. I was not toivel that. The disposable pan, I was not toivel. A permanent pan, you do have to be toivel. Hopefully in 45 minutes or so we'll have a cake that's ready to be eaten. The Mir Tashem, next lesson, we're actually going to go to a mikvah and show other laws that are related with the actual immersion, the tefillah that you do in the mikvah itself. You have to take off labels and make sure there's nothing foreign, no foreign substances stuck to it. And other laws that are related to Tevilas Keilim. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.